Hello and welcome to What's on My Mind with Fiona. I'm your host, Fiona Kane. This afternoon, there's a couple of things I want to talk about in regards to things going on in Australia. So, firstly, I want to talk about the nurses who were caught on video talking to that Israeli man about a week ago. That was disgusting. They were showing off about having killed Jews in their hospital. Now, look, I don't know if at this stage it doesn't look like that's true. I don't know, but whether or not it's some sick fantasy that they would like to be true, or whether or not, or some sort of joke, or not, I kind of think doesn't matter. The fact that they just think that that's funny and think that that's their intentions is terrible. And then also they were threatening to kill Jews that come into that hospital. And there's been reports since and other people who have spoken out about the behaviours within that hospital and within some with some health practitioners in regards to the treatment of Jews. This is Australia. That is not okay. That is simply not okay. And you could take away the word Jew and insert with any other religion or culture or race or whatever, and it's the same thing, right? It's not okay. In Australia, we do not treat people as inhuman. We do not threaten to kill people because of their religion or their culture or their identity or whatever it is. That is just not okay in Australia. And in my opinion, and also in health professions where people have sworn to uphold an even higher level of care, because when you are in a hospital and you are not well and you're being nursed, you have to put a lot of trust in those health professionals, and some doctors have been saying some nasty things as well. And the idea that in Australia, if you are not well and you go to a doctor or to a hospital, that you have to think about whether or not you are safe. That is, there's no words for that. It's just disgusting. That should not happen, and that's not acceptable in Australia. And I do not care what your opinions are about Gaza and Israel and all of those things. We're in Australia, and we have values in Australia, and part of those values are to treat people with dignity and with, not to treat people badly because of their race or their religion or whatever it is. So that is just not okay. I'm glad that they've lost their jobs and they're not allowed to work in New South Wales again. Look, in my opinion, as far as I'm aware, he was not born in Australia, so he should lose his Australian citizenship and he should be deported. Simple as that. There's no other. Like, if you are a horrible racist like that, if you have that much hate in your heart for other human beings, you do not belong in Australia. So we have to have, in the Western world, it's our, as Gadsard would call it, our suicidal empathy that we have, where we have said that all cultures are the same and we can just have everyone in and a blend and it's all going to be great. We have to have people that believe in the same beliefs that we have in Australia, as in that, not Christianity, but Christian values, as in love thy neighbour and caring for each other and supporting each other, that kind of stuff, right? That is what Australia has been built on, and we do not need people who don't want that. And doesn't matter what the religion or culture is. And there'll be people of, there'll be people of the same religion who do have Australian values and they want to live here because it's a better place, and they can have free speech, and they can be free in their lives and all the rest of it. That's great. Those people, fine. But if you have hate in your heart, or you want to bring overseas other wars from other places and bring them to our shores, as far as I'm concerned, you're not welcome here. And you certainly should not be allowed to work in a health or healing field. The second thing I want to talk about today is, oh my goodness, if you've been watching any of the handovers of in Gaza, the handovers of the hostages, the Jewish hostages. For my friends who like to talk about misogyny, if you want to know what misogyny is, please watch them. So after, was it been 15 months? I can't remember where we're up to, of these women being, obviously most of them, if not all of them, have been raped. who knows what tortures they've been through, starved, all the rest of it, right, for 15 months or however long it's been, in absolute terror the whole time, never knowing if they will survive, never knowing if they'll see their families again, not knowing what happened to their families. And then the intimidation that they get, the final kind of intimidatory strategies that they use, where all these men and boys stand over the top of them and jeer at them all the way until they get to their car. That is disgusting. That is disgraceful. And then last week or the week before, whenever it was those men who looked like they'd come out of the Holocaust survivors because they'd been starved. And then, this week we get that that disgusting display, where those lovely children, those beautiful little redhead children, I'm sorry, I'm just trying to check the name of the family. I did have it here, and that they have been. The display that they did for that family, and it turns out that it's actually not even the mother. Now they've checked the remains, it actually wasn't her. They don't even know it was an unidentified person, the adult who was with them, who was expected that it was the mother. But their children were, it was the children. The children have been identified. And of the behavior it's amazing, isn't it, in Gaza, that they've got these graphic arts and printing studios available, and they can print these horrible, disgusting, anti-Semitic sort of billboards with these children on there and this woman on there, and put on this big display and build up this big stage for. Everything about it was disgusting and horrible, and last week they had, I think it was it the husband last week who didn't know that they got him to sort of say how he was looking forward to seeing his wife and children, and knowing all along that they were dead. So the hideous, that just like that's the torturing, mentally torturing people. And then this week, the torture for the family, when finally they do get to have, the remains sent back of the 4-year-old, the 9-month-old. Like, what did they ever do? And to have them sent home, and to say it was the mother as well, and at least you could say have got their remains and they can have some sort of closure, and then to find out that actually wasn't the mother after all. So they don't have any closure, and they don't know what has happened to that mother. And so she's, even with her body wasn't with her babies. Everything about that was disgusting, and the way it was staged and the way that they behave. So they're just continuing to try and terrorize these people. And if you can see that, and not see who the bad guys are, and not see the evil in that. Like, I just can't understand how you cannot see the evil in that. Even if you disagree with what Israel are doing, can you still not see the evil of Hamas and their behavior and the way that those people treated that family and just even those children's remains? It's disgusting. And I am so sick of people excusing it and people saying that they're against Zionism when really they're anti-Jew. And it's just horrific, and it's not okay. It's disgusting. And I thought that the Australia I lived in, not that that was in Australia, but I just thought the Australia I lived in was a better place than that, and we can be better. We can be better, but we can't accept this behaviour. Now, the issue is that the solutions we're trying to come up with for it. So, in my opinion, the Albanese government in Australia have been so piss weak on this that it's been disgusting. And in actual fact, the truth is that many of them, including Penny Wong, actually support Hamas. They try not to say they do, but clearly they do, right? So, because you cannot say one thing about any Israeli or Jewish person without saying, oh, Islamophobia as well. That's not the problem that we're having here. We're not having problems with Islamophobia. We're having problems with Jew hate. That's the problem that we're having with disgusting anti-Semitism. And this government has been piss weak, like right from, on the Opera House steps when they were saying, whether they were saying gas the Jews or where's the Jews or whatever they were saying, that was before Israel had even retaliated. So that was just all of the people who were celebrating and joyous about all of the horrible massacre that happened in October last year, the year before last, sorry. And they were allowed to be on our Opera House steps in Sydney doing that, and nobody put a stop to it. And over, and this isn't just in Australia you're seeing this, but, the people who are getting arrested are the people supporting the Israelis because they say, oh, you're going to cause a problem. Well, hey, why don't you just shut down this stuff? It's not okay. And, I'm a believer in free speech, but there's free speech and there's celebrating and asking for murder against other people. And that's what these crowds have been doing. So there's a difference between saying, okay, I'm doing a march and I've been approved to do this march. And at this march, I'm going to say I support whoever I support, whatever. That is one thing. It's a whole other thing where people are chanting things about destroying other races and celebrating the destruction and the killing of other races. That is a whole other thing. The issue is, though, that now, so I have all this weakness for the last couple of years in Australia and not really doing anything about it and actually subtly approving of it and believing in it. And you can tell they do because all their friends at the ABC are also clearly anti-Israel and supporting Gaza because all of their reports are one-sided and only ever supporting Gaza. They and Hamas, like now so they're trying to stop it by an inciting racial hatred bill, which apparently passed in the New South Wales Parliament and will become law. And look, I I would like to believe this is a solution. I'm not so sure. So it's going to be illegal to provoke hate towards someone or a group because of their race. Punishment up to $11,000 or 2 years in prison. The question is, I don't know, I think that Catherine Deves was commenting on this the other day. I haven't read this bill, so I don't know. But I think she was commenting there was stuff in there about gender, which is always sort of questionable. What's that about? But the other thing is, yes, I think that there's already laws in regards to uh, encouraging, asking for violence, that sort of thing, right? There's already those kind of laws in place. And this kind of thing, look, I haven't read it, so I'd have to read it to be really, really sure. But my concern is to provoke hate. What does that mean? Because honestly, if you talk to anyone who's left of centre at the moment, they think that every word a Conservative says provokes hate, right? So just calling a woman and a man is, they call it provoking hate, right? They're calling Elon Musk Hitler. They don't know what the definition of a fascist is or Hitler because they're calling everybody who's not extremely left fascist or Hitler, right? So the problem is who decides what is provoking hate, right? And what does hate look like? So even though I think, like, obviously I don't want people like these nurses to get away with what they've gotten away with, and I think that there should be punishment. The question is a bill like this, how broad is this? How fuzzy is it in regards to what it really means? What is it actually at the end of the day? What's it going to look like in practice? I might always have a concern about what these things will look like in practice because sometimes things sound good, but what they look like in practice is a whole different thing. And what we're seeing at the moment, like if you see what's going on in Germany, like I don't know if you saw that the speech by JD Vance, the Vice President of the US, his speech in Europe last week at that conference. It was brilliant, and if you haven't seen it, please watch it. It's brilliant. And he questioned in there a lot about what Europe are doing now in regards to free speech. And there's really big issues in Europe with free speech, and particularly in places like Germany. And last week, 60 Minutes in the US, they did an episode where they were talking about free speech and going around with the police in Germany who were arresting people for all of these social media posts and things. And in 60 Minutes did it as if it was a good thing. Oh yeah, it's a good thing. And it's so not okay. Like what's happening in Germany and what I can see has happened for many years is, and this is what happens when it's like parenting from guilt. Parenting from guilt is never a good idea. And Dr. Phil talked about that for many, many, many years. Don't parent from guilt, because when you do that, what you do is you indulge things and you allow things, and things end up becoming a mess because you just let children run roughshod. Well, I'd say the same thing for like governing out of guilt. And what's happened in a lot of places, and in particular Germany, this is an example of it. And actually, you see the same thing in South Africa. In places where something evil and terrible has happened. So in South Africa, it was apartheid. And in Germany, obviously, it was the Holocaust and Hitler and the Nazis and all of that, right? So in places where something extreme like that has happened, what happens sometimes in response to that is, of course, it makes sense that the people in Germany want to make sure that never happens again. And they are so sensitive to, concerned about something like that happening again, that they like really going overboard to stop it. However, what they don't realize is their strategies to stop it are the thing that's actually going to cause it. Because when you actually look at history and you see that leading up to, like, so I think after, between World War One and World War Two, they did a lot of this bringing in places in like Germany. They brought in all of these rules. They took away free speech and they were closing down free speech and all of this. And that the Nazi Party came out of that, right? And not only that, but the Nazi Party were initially the socialists. They were socialists, right? So it shows you that the end game of socialism it can only end up in one place, because it's all the same thing. At the end, when you get into those extreme left or extreme right, ends up being dictatorship, whichever way you look at it. And so what comes out of all of this shutting down of speech is you do get these extremes come out of it. So what Germany is doing at the moment, I think, is actually going to feed the actual thing that they want to stop. And that they close, I think it's like a newspaper or a magazine who had 40,000 subscribers. And as far as I can see, and I'm not an expert on this, but I'm just talking my opinion about what I've seen in the news. So I could stand corrected on some things, absolutely. But as far as I can see, they had 40,000 subscribers and it was a conservative paper. And essentially they were just saying that, that they shut them down because they were saying that the immigration issue in that country is a big problem. And it is a big problem. Angela Merkel even acknowledged that she stuffed up with that by just letting millions of people come in and thinking that just more the better, but not realizing that, again, you've got to have people with the same kind of values as in your society. If they're people with very different values and cultures, it does not work. And it has not worked there. In Sweden, there's no-go zones now. And I think, what did they say? Like 1 in every 4 women would be raped in Sweden. That's disgusting. So there's no-go zones there because of the amount of immigration that's come in that are people who are not conducive to a Western lifestyle, people who do not support our freedoms and do not support women's autonomy and freedom and all of those things. So it is a big issue. So in Germany, trying to kind of fix that problem, they're actually causing the problem because they're not allowing free speech. So societies, unfortunately, when you have difficult problems in a society, the most important thing you can do as a society is talk about it, right? You need to talk about it. You need to have people talk about it. But what we do is we constantly shut people down. The same in Australia. Forever, everyone has just called Pauline Hanson a racist. And so much of what she said and so many things that she warned about are what is coming to fruition. And it's not about being anti-immigration. In fact, immigration brings a lot of beautiful things to a country if it is done right, if it is done at the right pace, and if people integrate into that society, but also bring some of their great cultural things as well. So immigration can be and is a wonderful thing when it's done right. When it is not done right, it is a major, major issue and really disturbs the country's peace and unity and can destroy and rip apart the fabric of that society, which is exactly what's happening in Germany, exactly what's happening in Sweden, now happening in England, and potentially happen here. Well, we're starting to see it happen here by the way people are behaving towards the Jews in this country. So these are discussions that we need to have, and shutting down speech does not help this at all. However, and when people sort of say, "Oh, well, you had a problem with the nurses," that's a different thing. So it is one thing for those nurses, again, not in their uniform and not in their workplace, by the way, too, when they're caring for people. But it is one thing for them to say, "We have a problem with Israel or with Netanyahu or with certain wars or certain issues." That is free speech. But talking about actively having killed and wanting to kill Jews who are patients in your hospital, that's not a free speech thing. That is just disgusting, inappropriate, appalling behavior. So there's free speech has its limits, and it already has its limits, and its limits are in criminal stuff, right? Its limits are in threatening to harm or harming people for over their race or culture or ethnicity or religion, whatever it is, right? So don't get me on the free speech thing. You can have an opinion about a war, you can have an opinion about things, but once you start talking about actively harming people, that is a whole other level of behavior. Anyway, that's where I'm at for this week. That's the things that that are on my mind, and I'm happy for you to engage with me in these discussions if it is good faith and if you can talk on the topic. Not if you just want to be abusive. I do not respond to any abusive or attacking stuff. I will absolutely happily have conversations, but they have to be respectful and in good faith. Otherwise, it's not worth my time and energy to engage. Anyway, I hope you have a good week. And my heart breaks for Israel at the moment, and my heart breaks for that family. I just see those cute little redhead children, and even in death, that poor woman. I don't even know where her body is. She's not with her children, and it's the last of the insults to her, the last of the terrorizing her even in death, that she can't even be with her children, and her body can't be with them, and everything about it is disgusting and awful. And if you can look at that, and if you look at that and say, yes, but there's something wrong, right? If you have to say yes, but, and not just acknowledge that that's just disgusting. So anyway, I'm praying for those children and their mother and their family, and that I hope they can be at peace at some level. And yeah, everything about it is just horrific. Yeah. Anyway, my thoughts are with everybody involved there. I'm just so sad for that family and for Israel. What a terrible thing they're experiencing at the moment. Anyway, I will talk to you again at another time. Thanks. Bye.